Today I'm going to talk to you about edge control. That is how soft or hard an edge is. I'm going to begin with soft edges. In order to do this, I'm going to have to show you a darker value paired up with a slightly lighter hue. So I'm using kind of a dark purpley black, and then I'm going to add a object that is orange or red, and I'm going to show you how to soften that edge so it looks kind of blurred. Now, it is really important that you overlap one hue into another, that you don't want to leave any bit of white of the paper exposed. So remember, an edge can be created with value, and that's what's happening here, or where one object meets another. So I do have two brushes. One brush is dedicated to the red-orange. The second brush is dedicated to the darker purpley black hue. Now I'm going to go in and I'm going to soften that edge. So there's a couple of ways to get a blurred edge. One of them is to work wet into wet. So you can see I'm pulling up with my stroke there, and I'm going to, while the paint's still wet, come back over the top with my orange brush. Now I am going a different direction with the orange paint, but I'm switching between my brushes. So I have both brushes in my hand. Right now I've switched back to the darker value brush, and then I'm going back and forth with the orange. And I'm doing this little short flick with my stroke to kind of scrub it into the black until it becomes a little bit hazy. Now this is a much easier technique to do with oil paint, but you can still get a blurred edge with acrylic. So that's what we're striving for, is getting a edge that's slightly out of focus. Here it is again. So sharp edge with the black, and then I go right over the top and push that orange into the black and kind of feather my stroke until it starts to become fuzzy and out of focus. So it's kind of a push and pull with the paint. There is another technique that I'm going to show you in a moment, and it's a technique you actually already know. You just have to think about it and do it much quicker than you've been doing it. So essentially, the next technique is a gradient. So it's a quick gradient because you're going right from one color to a sharp edge, so your gradient has to happen faster. You still have two brushes, and I'm going vertical with my stroke here, and I am kind of ombreing it down quickly to that red-orange hue. And you want to be able to get a scale of gradient going, so it's dark, and then I'm mixing some of that red-orange into the dark, and then you want to get it to eventually transition to a pure hue, that bright orange. You see this often on a horizon, but you should also see it on things like the edge of an apple, the edge of a person's face. If you're looking at a pear, it would be the edge of the pear. So that you're getting that edge to just kind of melt a little bit into the background. I'm going to show you what this should look like on the pear, because I want you to go to your pear sometime today and work on blurring, softening those outer edges. Now, sharp edges or hard edges are important to a painting too, but not nearly as much as soft edges. So I'm using the same technique of getting the background wet and having two brushes, one that has like a mix of the green of the pear, and then I kind of blur them back and forth by pushing and pulling, working wet into wet. There is another method called dry brushing, which means your brush has zero water on it, and you kind of scrub the green paint into the background paint a little bit, but I think the wet into wet is my favorite approach, or doing a combination of wet into wet plus kind of a mini gradient that happens really quickly. So remember, how the human eye works is we can only focus on one area at a time. Anything that's moving away from the eye starts to blur, which is why I want you to try and blur the outer edges of your pear. You can have some sharp edges. I do on the pear. I put it on the stem, so the stem has a hard edge, but you shouldn't see a hard edge all the way around, and certainly no white of the paper. If you have any white of the paper, it's important that you cover that. You do want to also make sure that you have two coats of paint. Right now, my pear painting has about 2.5, maybe 3 in places, and that just helps to make your painting look opaque, which is part of what we're going for here as well. Even the top part of your pear should be a little bit blurred as it falls back into that space, that dark space that's behind the pear itself. Your background may be light. You can still blur the edge of the pear with a light colored background. Now, my pear does have some lost and found edges, and I also want to show you where the pear becomes really soft. So here's what it looks like, kind of similar to the John Singer Sargent painting of the girl we viewed the other day. So you have a found edge where the pear stands out against the background, and then you have lost edges where you can't quite tell where that edge ends and the background begins. It's cool to have lost and found edges in a work if you can pull it off. Try to do that. It's kind of fun.